YouTube, I've gotten some requests to remake this video about the jamming issue with the Brownie Gold Hunter 3.5 inch. And I've completely disassembled the gun. And if you have one of these, you should be able to do this and understand it. But the problem that comes up with these that makes them jam are one of two things. The tube. This is the ejection, what they call the ejection tube. Where this spring and plunger go up inside this tube, if there's any dirt or debris in here, or too much oil, it will cause the gun to cycle slowly and it will make it jam. The other thing is, if you look down inside of the magazine housing here, I'll use something to point us out. If you see these grooves right here, there's a set that runs here and there's another one that runs on the outside. I have found that as long as you keep those grooves lubricated quite frequently, I take a small bottle of just Remington gun oil with me in the field, and while I'm, when I'm out hunting, you just put a drop of that, a couple drops on the front or the back side, and a couple drops right in here is actually a cutout that you can actually put a little bit of oil. Okay, I've found as long as you keep this rail and this rail lubricated, this gun will cycle with no problem. It doesn't matter what load you shoot out of it. Because these guns, I guess, are known for jamming, and most of the time they tell you you don't clean a semi-automatic that often. But I have found not so much cleaning it, but they even tell you not even to really use a lot of lubricant in them. But I have found if you keep this rail and this outside rail lubricated, and you keep this on the inside clean and lubricated, this gun will work just as good as any other gun out in the market. So I'm going to show you here what I do when I go to put this back together to get it ready. I just take a little bit of oil. Hold on a second. Now, all you do, you don't need it on this part. Where it's important is right here. A little bit there, a little bit there. And you take your hand and you do this with it, and then wipe any excess off. You just need just enough to make that lubricated. You don't want too much, because like I said, it will cause it not to cycle right. And then on this here, when you're going to reassemble this slot, and there's a pin that goes into the tube. You got to make sure that this slot is lined up with the where the pin goes on the tube. And you take your port, and slide this up in like so. And now this thing, there's no easy way to that I have found yet to compress this spring to make it easy to put that pin back in. This spring is very, very strong. And what I have found to do is I have an old 30-06 shell casing, and it actually works really good for putting this pin back in. So like I said, this spring is under a lot of pressure. Now, once you do this, kind of cap it with your thumb. You take a straight screwdriver and you just get the side of the plastic here. Oh, my slot's off. See? Yep, the slot was off a little bit, but anyway, this is the hardest part of doing this here, is trying to get this pin back in the tube. And I find it to be the most challenging part of the whole thing, but yeah, the hardest part of this is getting this slot to stay where you need it to be to get this. Yeah, the magazine keeps rotating on me, and it's really hard to put this spring. This is the worst part of doing this whole thing, is putting this spring back into this, because like I said, it is under such tension. It's definitely not easy to do. Hold on one second here. Stand this up here and get this spring in. Okay, sorry for that. Like I said, this is the hardest part of doing this. Now, once you get that started, you got to get that to line up to the other side there. Okay. Now, another important thing is this has to be completely centered on both sides, because when you go to install this in the end of your stock, which pushes against this plate, okay, that's what centers this into the gun. Okay, this will slide down over the top, has to slide down over the top of that pin, and that can be a little difficult at times too, but you'll see when we get to that part. Okay, now once this is in, you can reach down inside the magazine here, as you can see, and make sure that that's just really easy to push and move. See? As long as you can move that back and forth really easily, you're not going to have any trouble with this gun. Now, okay, your firing pin mechanism, okay, before you put that in, what I do, is this rail, this is the only part of the gun that you don't have to be afraid about putting some oil on, because this is going to make this gun work, you know. I wipe excess out, but you will find that if you put this in, and you have that slot well lubricated, you will have no troubles with this gun. Now, this part here, okay, when you go to put this in, you have to use your hand, your finger, hold up on this, because this has to line up with this ejection port, and the ball of that sits right inside of there. Now, once you click that in, it won't come back out here. See? It should not come back out. Okay? Now, what you want to do is after you have this done, okay, now, on the spring that holds your shell into the tube magnet, you depress that, and you put your handle in. Now, handle faces towards the front of the gun, you push it all the way down, and pull it out on it, and it'll click. That should, and that'll be good. Now, this won't come out, and you don't have to worry about it coming out of the slide assembly. Okay. Now, the next part, what I do is, my trigger assembly is what goes in next. Okay. Now, on the trigger mechanism, really there's not too much that you need to do with it. Just keep it clean of dirt. I might put a drop of oil on the hammer, where the hammer rides up, and that's just right here. Just one drop on each side, and that's it. Leave it alone. You don't want too much oil in here. You get too much oil in here, and it'll cause it to start sticking because it'll hold powder and stuff. Now, next thing, make sure these are centered, because these are how you take your trigger mechanism apart. This pin here and this pin here. As long as they're straight and centered, this will go right back together. And I had to fiddle with it just a little bit, but okay, it's right back together. And then make sure your holes are lined up. Reinstall your pins. And I carry a small screwdriver with me in the field in case I would have to take this apart for some reason. Just something little like this, just something to push those pins out with. That's all you need. But if you do what I'm telling you, and you lubricate this rail on both sides and keep it lubricated, this gun will not jam on you. I've never, and I've shot 1 ounce target loads all day long and never had a problem. You know, if it starts to look like if it's starting to cycle a little slow, or you know, you think it's not cycling properly, 99% of the time it's because the two rails that the firing pin that your firing pin mechanism slides on is dry. Keep that lubricated. This gun will shoot all day long. All day long. Now next I'm going to start and install the magazine tube with the plug. This is the plug that comes with this. Oh, it is a piece of 3/8 hose, and but it's effective and it works. You just slide that. Here's the cup. Slide that into there, and then that over the top of your spring. Okay, slide your spring in the tube. Okay, now this takes a little finagling, but this isn't quite as bad as the ejector, or as the spring to cycle the magazine. The magazine tube spring here is pretty. It's a strong spring also, but it's a lot easier to get in than that other one. And this is a great design, in the fact that all it does is click, right there. And that's it. That's it. See? It clicks in there, and that's it. One thing I do try to pay attention to with this too is if you take the barrel off on a regular basis, and this tube right here, this is where your gas port uses to seal this. Try to keep this as clean as I possibly can. It doesn't really hurt. I've had this really dirty, and this gun shoot just fine. And like I said, when I first got the gun, I had jamming issues, and it's because I didn't understand how the gun worked. And once I figured out that as long as you keep it lubricated inside of here and keep this lubricated, this gun, I hunt ducks and geese with it all day and never have a problem with it. So, it is a good gun. Alright, next one I'm going to do now is we'll put the stock on, and this part here actually goes here on the stock. You slide it. Now, see? This is the only problem here. You got to make sure that thing's perfectly centered, or this does not. None of this stuff wants to go together. It's very tight tolerances. Sorry. Yeah, this pin's the hardest part of this whole gun. Trying to get it apart or putting it back together. There it goes. Now, okay. Now, when you got this back together, okay, first part that goes in is this, okay, and you'll see it. There's a beveled edge. That beveled edge faces out, and this faces towards the top of the stock, just like so. And then this collar, there's a beveled edge on here that goes over the threads, the beveled edge towards the plate, and then you take your nut, and your nut goes on the end, and it takes a 5/8 inch socket, and to tighten it to the bolt's a 5/8 inch bolt, standard socket, or depot, I mean. Like I said, once you got all that in there, and this nut they're fine threads, so it's really, you got to be very careful you don't cross thread this nut. Go. Socket. And this doesn't have to be overly tight. Like I said, you just tighten up the nut. Now, I just give it a little snug because it doesn't have to be there, just like that. That's enough. Stock's not loose. Straight. Okay. Now, to install the barrel on this, I suggest you open the slide up and let it lock. Once you got it in this lock position, putting the barrel on is pretty simple. You take your Take your spring, it goes on the magazine tube first, then the ejector goes next. Now, when you go to install the barrel on this, okay, this and the ejector have to kind of go on at the same time because there's a narrow spot on the ejector and it gets wider as it goes down. And if you don't put them together at the same time, you'll have trouble getting it in. But once you got that lined up, it goes right together. Now make sure that when this is tight down like this, that this moves freely. Okay? This is actually what causes your bolt to slide back and forth. Okay? Then you take your cover. And obviously it goes on one way, you can't really mess this up. Put your cover on, slide it on all the way, and you put your cap, your magazine cap on. Now be sure when you first start that to push in on it a little bit before you tighten that up. And when you work this, it should be really easy to work, just like that. And I hope this helped anybody with jamming issues with this gun. But if you do this two simple things that I mentioned, this gun will never jam on you. Yeah. Please rate, comment, and subscribe, and thank you.